You're live. Oh, that's exciting. Okay, apparently I'm live. I don't know if that's true or not. Let me situate myself. I'm gonna get my water and my coffee, which is right over here. Oh, look, 5 people already. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the book launch. Welcome to the book launch. Let me get my water. Let's settle in. Porcupines and Electric Eels. What every parent of a neurodivergent teen must know. Synopsis, quick synopsis. This book is based first and foremost on my lived experience and secondarily on my professional experience. And I would say tertiarily, thirdly, based on my academic experience, my 2 degrees in community education out of Goddard College. I wrote this book because I wrote this book a little bit for my mom and for me. One day I'd like to be a parent. And I think a lot of parents struggle with their teenagers because being a teenager is I thought, a struggle in and of itself, especially for those of us who have some type of neurodivergence, some type of learning disability, intellectual disability, emotional disability, cognitive. Yeah. It can be difficult. You can zone out like I just did for a second there. There are just so many aspects of it that are inherently not what people say they're used to, and that's the neurotypical. So this book was written for parents of neurodivergent teenagers, so that with the following question in mind: how can we understand and respect our infinitely complicated neurodivergent teenagers? Life in and of itself is messy. It's interconnected to all other life. You cannot freeze frame somebody and say, okay, gotcha. I know everything there is to know about you, even if they are your kid. And that's kind of crazy. It's just wild to think that we are always changing. I think let's see. Okay, checking something. Sorry. I think that life is messy, and it's important to acknowledge that. And teenagers are messy, and it's important to acknowledge that. In this book, I combine the lived experience of being depressed as a teenager, getting diagnosed with bipolar disorder, getting diagnosed with social anxiety, complex trauma, and then later on there were other things, ADHD and other things, physical things, chronic things that are lifetime, that are supposedly incurable, that are there just wasn't a lot of belief in me or the people around me when I was in special education. It just was very clear that between the lines, it was like the best that you could do probably wasn't that great. And that sucks to internalize. For me personally, there was a kind of a dichotomy where when I did show up, I was a decent student And it felt like this pressure to, and I talk about this in the book, this pressure to perform for arbitrary measures of school, things that I didn't much care about. And I think that worsened the consequences of being neurodivergent. That worsened the symptoms of going through mental health issues because the conditions were not inclusive, because the conditions were not meeting my needs, because they weren't understanding and respecting of my complexity in that moment. You see, so it ties together. The more that we can hold space, the right kind of space for each individual, there's no like cookie cutter way to do this, but the more that we can hold space for our teenagers in their own individuality, the more that they will flourish, the more that they will achieve their own definition of success. Off the beaten path learning is my self-directed education business, and we provide one-on-one self-directed education to neurodivergent teenagers. And what I summarize our goal to be is so that they develop confidence, creativity, and independence. I say that because those are three words that are kind of easy to hang on to, but truthfully, it's better encapsulated in empowerment through choice. I think empowerment through choice, that slogan, it's more than a slogan. It holds what we're really doing here. The problem that we're solving is learned helplessness. And I talk about this in the book. Learned helplessness is something I learned from Dr. Martin Seligman. If you hear the dog, Pippa says hello. Okay, she says hello. She's here with us now. Martin Seligman. He is a psychologist, clinical psychologist, and he wrote The Optimistic Child in 1995, and he studied positive psychology, kind of I would say the father of positive psychology. And one of the things that they researched was this phenomenon called learned helplessness. And learned helplessness is associated with clinical depression. So if you self-identify as having learned helplessness, as not believing in your own ability to do something, to solve a problem, to figure it out, if you believe that you are helpless, if you have learned that belief, it's more likely to be correlated with clinical depression and a slew of other things too. Obesity, overspending, bullying, suicide, and suicidality. And I think I'm forgetting some things too. Overspending, debt. Just that it's a theme of like struggling to solve problems, struggling to believe in yourself, self-efficacy, empowerment. I just think that what is education for if not to empower and to help everyone believe in their ability to learn whatever it is that they gotta learn. Okay, I think I'm going to unveil this book because it's been 9 minutes and we're just chatting. So, okay. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. I did this. Shout out to the learner that I did this with. You know who you are. Screen printing at Brooklyn Brainery. Okay. The logo. The logo. I did that with my hands. and some paint, some acrylic paint. But what is inside? I'm being so silly to no one at all. I don't think anyone's here. If anyone is here, feel free to say hello. I don't think anyone is here. I will get to future plans for the book toward the end of this time. But I bring that up now because this has been an imperfect project. We're okay with that. Okay. It's the first edition. There will be follow-up to this work. Okay, so what is in the bag? Da, da, da. Da, 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 da. And what is all this? All right, now we put the bag away. Everybody say goodbye to the bag. All right. All right. So, shall I? I might. I recently had a ceremony with a learner, and we used this orange runner. Don't know what it is, actually. We used this orange thing as I don't know what that is. All right, let's move on. As a thing to walk through ceremoniously. Well, I look very strange. No one that joins will understand out of context why I'm wearing this in the summer. That's part of the fun, I think. All right, so here we have the book. Hey, it's here. Thanks to Lulu Print on Demand, I got this physical copy of the book. I ordered several copies to the first book buyers just yesterday, and I also ordered a bunch of copies way before that, so that the people attending the event, there's a reading and signing, if you can make it in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn on Thursday, August 13th at 6:30 p.m. We will be doing a reading and signing of the book, and so people who have not yet received it will receive an extra copy right there and then. I'm hoping. I got to work it out with Bookmark Shop, but I hope that they will be kind and accommodate. Okay. This is the final thing. I also want to show the earlier drafts. The process. I started with just my free writing my heart out with the following concept. How can neurodivergent people, especially teenagers, how can they be understood and respected? And how can I help parents to do that? And so I was free writing in 2024. 2 years ago in 2024, I was free writing. And this is what I came up with. Draft number 1. And it followed this kind of outline of it kind of followed an outline that I learned out of Freedom School. When I worked for Red Hook Initiative in Brooklyn, they had a Freedom School site. Shout out to Tariq Bell, who put that together. Not single-handedly, I don't think, but I think put it together. And what I learned from that framework out of, oh man, I can't believe I'm forgetting her name. That sucks. What I learned from the framework was that it was kind of like there are levels to the context that we're in. So there is the family unit, then there is the community, then there is the world, and so forth, right? And so I wanted the book to follow an outline of first, being with yourself. How can we help teenagers to just be in themselves, with themselves, and be okay? Because just that level of it is really, really difficult for a lot of neurodivergent young people, because not only are they going through all of the immense hormonal changes of just being a teenager, but that plus they are feeling like outliers, like outside of the norm, of the what's supposed to be, what's supposed to happen, how you're supposed to show up, how you're supposed to think, how you're supposed to look, make eye contact and think and answer questions, like how you're supposed to speak. The list goes on and on. So part 2 is the one about letting them just be themselves, right? Let them be them. And then part 3 gets into how can they be with others? How can they be socially? How can they interact with other people in a way that is inclusive to them, safe, and empowering to them? How can they be understood and respected in groups, right? And even one-on-one with other people. And that includes conversations about like social media, bullying, cyberbullying. These topics are prevalent. These topics are real. They're as old as time. I mean, social media is very new, but certainly gossip is not. So we need to talk about these things. There are some things I don't talk about in the book. I'll just mention that. It's kind of tangential to what I'm riffing here, but there are some things I don't talk about in the book. I don't really get into sex education at all, or dating, or like romance or anything in that world. I don't get much into politics and the way that teenagers, because they care so big and because they feel so big, their highs are higher, their lows are lower. I talk about that citing Robert Sapolsky and his chart on dopaminergic levels, and how teenagers are more sensitive to these cycles, these ups and downs. They're just like, and they can't help it. And it sucks. Like, it sucks for the people around them, but it also sucks for them. It's not easy to go through those ups and downs. And so I talk about these topics, right? The gossip, the social media, the bullying, the cyberbullying. Okay, part 4 is being in the world. That one has more to do with institutions, mostly like school. I talk a lot about education in part 4. I also talk about the school to prison pipeline briefly. I talk about systems of oppression and how kids can feel that and know it, not just feel it, but they just like aware of it. So things like racism, classism, homophobia, transphobia. The list is very, very long, as we know. Colorism, etc. It all plays a part in the environment, in the world, in being in the world, and so it's important that we have that information on how to support them to direct themselves and move themselves, navigate themselves in the world. How can they? This is, I think, speaking to the independent, and maybe creativity and all of it. Yeah, the confidence, the creativity, and the independence in part 4. So that's the structure of the book, is like them within themselves. That's part 2. Part 3 is them being with other people, socializing, interacting, having relationships. And then part 4 is being in the world, being in systems, being in the climate of society, and in the institutions that we have created for ourselves. So, okay, let's take a beat. take a beat. Let me take a beat. Welcome. Why? Inside. Thank you. Reading. Q&A. Future and please buy. Okay. This is my agenda. I wrote it down. Let's go through it together. Okay, welcome. I did that. It was pretty sloppy, but I did it. Why? I kind of did it. Again, I would say it wasn't the best. Inside, that's where we're at right now. We could go a little bit deeper into that. Let me do a round 2. Why not? Nobody's here. Okay, let's just recap really quickly. Welcome. You are here with the founder of Off the Beaten Path Learning. My name is Dominique Bible, and I wrote this book called Porcupines Electric Eels, What Every Parent of a Neurodivergent Teen Must Know. I wrote it because parenting neurodivergent teenagers is difficult. And how the heck are you supposed to do it? I wrote it to provide hope. I wrote it to provide mostly hope. And I think indirectly to provide empowerment to the teenager. I strongly believe that everybody has power, everybody has worth, everybody is a genius, in fact, is what I think. I think not everybody has access to their genius, not everybody has practiced their genius, and I think it's also not a formed, finished thing. I think even people who are masters of their craft continue to build their genius, continue to strengthen or not their genius. I'm an educator and I'm most interested in learning. What I think I teach, when people ask me, what do you teach? Usually I say how to learn. Because I think that's the thing that happens across the board the most, is that learners will gain from off the beaten path learning a sense of an understanding of how they learn. Not necessarily how to learn, how they learn. And it could be both. Some people have gone for both. Like explicitly, I want to know how to learn. I want to understand the process of learning. Kind of more traditionally, more in a studied way, less in a self-reflective way. How to learn. I learned about learning from Goddard College. Shout out to Goddard College. And Jackie Fisher and the community education program. And the process of learning, in my view of it, is very connected to the spiral, the community education spiral. And it's funny, actually, someone that was a colleague of mine, a community education person, Alyssa, just texted me and said, like, book launch, woohoo! Shout out to Alyssa. So the community education spiral is 5 stages. The first stage is making a plan, is doing a needs assessment, is being able to look at what are we going for and what do we need. The second part of that process is the creating a plan. Once you know what you need, you sit down, you make a roadmap of like, what's the missing steps? I'm here, I want to get to here, I know my goals and I know my needs. How can I fill in the steps along the way? Third stage of the community education spiral is to build capacity. So this is when you're strengthening your ability to do the thing. You are practicing, you are researching, you are outlining, you are thinking through, building rebuilding, taking apart, like strengthening your ability to execute on whatever the goal is. Implementing looks like action. It may look like finishing. It may look like starting and pivoting. And we have to acknowledge that this happens a lot with teenagers and young adults. And it's with good reason. They are changing so rapidly that it can be painful, right? Growing pains. Like we know the term. We've all been there. Anyone who is an adult was once a teenager. We've all been there. But growing pains are real. And so the growth part of that, the learning part of that requires a lot of falling down, requires a lot of pivoting, necessitates. You cannot get around it. Any version of success will come with it many, many, many moons and fortnights and whatever more failure. Any version of anyone at all who has achieved anything that they deem as successful, because I think that's subjective. But it requires a lot of falling down on your face. Recently, a friend of mine, I was at a baby shower, and she was like, what did she say? I think I can remember it verbatim if I try. The more they fall down, the better they'll learn. Something like that. And I was like, hell yeah. Shout out to, I don't know if I should name her, but if she watches it, she'll know who she is. She said that. And it's true. It's true. Failure is important. And pivoting is not necessarily failure, but it's also important. It's also important, and it's also to be fully expected, just neuroscientifically to be expected with the youth development, the life development of a child. When they're in their teen years, they are experiencing more, especially prepubescent years, that like middle school range, they are experiencing more neuroplasticity than at any other point in their life except toddlerhood. So it's like the troublesome twos and then being 12, 13, 14. Hard, tough, difficult, challenging, annoying, frustrating. And for parents, that can often look like, wow, I want to rip my hair out. I recently heard a mom say something that is controversial about her kid, right? Like, I really wanted to, like stressed. Sounds of stress is what I'm trying to do here. Exert some level of a vendetta. No, she was joking. She was joking, but I think my point is that the frustration, of being the parent, it's significantly easier, and we know this, of course, to be patient as the educator, right? In fact, I think there are times when parents cannot be patient. There's too much going on. You, mom, dad, you are in charge of so much that is so important. The stakes are so friggin' high. Like, the stakes are high with my job. The stakes are super, super serious when you actually have this life that is yours, legally, morally, and spiritually. Sometimes biologically. So that's intense. And so what I'm pointing out is, not only should we acknowledge that it's hard for kid, we should acknowledge that it's really tough for parent. And I made a video about this where it was like, you're not a bad mom, but you're also going to mess up. You're going to fall down just like your kid's going to fall down. And the book, what the book does, what Porcupines and Electric Eels attempts to do, is to encourage you to keep. Originally, I wrote "keep fighting that battle," but then I changed it very intentionally to "keep trying." I encourage you to keep trying, and of course, you will. If you're reading this book, I know you will. You're not going to give up on your kid. Certainly, if you're reading this, some parents are not meant to be in that role. But if you're reading this book, I thoroughly believe that's not you. But encouragement goes a long way. It can even change the way you behave as a parent. Encouragement can change your mindset, which can change your actions. Information. This book is a third of it is information, a third of it is research, a third of it is stats, peer-reviewed articles, distilled, organized for the sake of understanding and respecting your kid. All right, let's move on. Let's keep it pushing. Book launch. I'm very proud of it, you know? I am. It was on my bucket list. Shout out to Erica in 2017, Erica Medina and I from RHI, okay? Fully calling you out. We did a bucket list. And the first thing on the list was write a book. Welcome person. Welcome number 2 person. I think I'm number 1 person. The first thing on the list was write a book. And the second thing on the list was publish a book. So I got a two for deal with this project. I was just saying I'm proud of it. It's imperfect. It is. There are things that I will resolve in the second edition. There will be an audiobook. This is all next year, maybe. 2028, maybe. We'll see. We will see. But there will be a second edition. And one of the things, I'm going to mention this, one of the things that I want to work on is really giving more due respect to the intersections of being a neurodivergent teenager. Because I do talk about, as I said earlier, in part 4, I talk about institutions, I talk about systems, I talk about being in the world. That is the name of part 4. Being in the world. Where is it? Being in the world. And one of those systems, one of those institutional, societal things, realities, is racism. And it's something that I have thought a lot about for a very long time, for many, many reasons. And I tried my best in the book to include anti-racism, to include inclusion that is fully inclusive. I remember talking to the now head of learning and development, NK Iga, shout out to NK. NK! If you're number 2, that would be interesting. NK, if that's you. So I remember talking to NK and they said, I don't think that anti-racism and inclusion are separate, and yet they can't exist without each other. And so when talking about how can you as a parent be inclusive to your neurodivergent teenager, I thought, well, then I should also integrate some different intersections, specifically racism. And I did a not good job at that, I think. And so in the second edition, I want to resolve that. So, okay. So getting back to the agenda on the list, okay. So we did welcome, we did that, we did why, we looked inside, we looked outside. All right. Let's go to thank you. Let's read the acknowledgments. Let's read the acknowledgments. I'm stressed. I'm stressing out. Okay. Y'all, social anxiety when there's no one, not no one. Number 2, you're here with me. Who are you? Mystery. All right. Acknowledgments. So I'm going to read from the thank you section of the book because it's the book launch and this project could not have happened without the support of the people that I name here. Thank you to Meu Coração, John, who supports my limbic system and upholds our unified life in exactly the ways I need. I love you, and I love what we are building together. You are better than all my dreams. Thank you to my mom, who was the unofficial editor for this work and the person who raised me and loves me more than anyone else. Thank you to my mom, minha mãe, eu te amo sempre, nesta vida e também nas vidas futuras. My Portuguese is not amazing, but there it is. Thank you to my Bay Ridge friends, my extended family. I love you. Thank you for upholding me in all my weirdness. You see me, accept me, and include me. It is a rare and wonderful blessing. Not sure how I got so lucky. Thank you to my learners. I'm so proud of each and every one of you. I am so honored to know all of you. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for trusting me in this process and for showing up for yourself, especially on the rough days. I'm excited for your future. That's interesting. I wrote future singular. And I hope you are too. I guess I was speaking to each learner individually but collectively at the same time. Thank you to the families who trust me as the holder of their kids' education. And same with the learners. Thank you for teaching me and trusting the process, right? So I learned so much from the moms and the dads in this program. So much. So much. One example, I'm not going to say his name, but dad of a teenager, athletic young man. This dad said to me, sometimes the best thing to do is nothing. And recently I was talking to NK. NK said the same thing. I love the do nothing strategy. So I learned a lot. Those are just, it's a kind of simple example, but I learned a lot from the moms and dads. Thank you for your words of gratitude, your vulnerability, and courage. You go above and beyond every single day, and you never stop. I've learned much about the practicality of love from the parents I serve. Thank you to my dear Goddard College and to its folks for sharing in one of the best times of my life and shaping me into the educator I am today. Yes, that's very true. I never knew how much I loved learning until I attended Goddard. Yeah. Recently it dawned on me that this self-directed education that Goddard provided me that was the inclusive learning I needed to not want to die anymore. I don't think it's a coincidence that the year that I was about to graduate with my bachelor's, the last time I had graduated anything had been 8th grade. I was 28. Okay. So it's been about 15 years last time I graduated anything. And, finally, it just struck me one day that it had been several months since I had last really seriously thought about unaliving, as they call it now. And this is the, I mean, I talk about this in the book. I talk about this topic in the book. It's a very heavy topic. But I do name what to do in that situation if your kid is expressing those feelings, what to do in that situation. Sorry, tangent. Skirt. Let's go back. Thank you to Jacqueline Fisher. You taught me everything I know about community education, and you are my greatest mentor and a dear friend. We had a conversation just the other day. Thank you for our 3:33 p.m. phone calls. To Sue, who was the first person to read part 1 and provide feedback and is the author of 2 books that you should read, Pockets of Freedom and Creative Mavericks. Thank you, Sue, for our new and unexpected friendship. Thank you to the places and programs that made me the professional I am today. Goddard College, Red Hook Initiative, DITA Academy, New York Transit Museum, Brooklyn Public Library, and the Adolescent Employment and Education Program. You showed me how to create the conditions within which learning flourishes. To Red Hook Initiative in particular, thanks for taking a chance on me. Thanks for showing me the meaning of leadership and culture. Thank you for sustaining a welcoming environment, a home away from home. And with the fullest heart, I write, to 2 young people no longer on this earth, Danny and Taya, we miss you. We will not ever forget you. It's not right that this world wasn't right to you. Thank you for harnessing and spreading joy in spite of that. We love you. All right, I'm going to take a break. Time to take a break. Let's just put this up here. We'll just be behind this for a split second. Just plants in the background. I think I'm going to do this for another 20 minutes, and then I'm going to go. That's my plan. I'm really curious who are the 2 people who have been here so far. I figured out by way of the 0 that 1 was not me. 1 was actually a human being other than me. So I'm curious who that was. And then number 2, there was another person here too. Cool. You caught the live. Book launch. The launch. All right. So I showed you the book. I showed you the inside of the book. I showed you draft 1. Let's real quick get a sneak peek. This is draft 2. And I printed it out. I got smart. The first time I just printed it out regular. Second time around, I did a, 2 pages on 1 page print. Boom. Where is it? Boom. Where is it? Ah! Boom. Are you talking to me? Boom. So that was draft 2. And then draft 3. Número 3. This one, I got a little bit more organized. I added the cover. I was feeling very good about it. It was like, oh, I'm done. Not done at all. Turns out even the final copy is not done because I'm planning on a 2nd edition. But all the same, this was another good run of edits. I went through the whole thing, and I edited the whole thing. And it was glorious. I just messed it up pretty badly. Give me a second here. Part 1, page 4. 22. Okay. I think I got it. Nope. That's okay. We're going to let it rock. I don't even know what draft that is anymore. Going live. I don't really love it. But I'm glad. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to have an outlet. I'm happy to have two people have joined for so long. I'm grateful. I'm grateful. So let's see. Reading Q&A. Reading. Okay, reading. This is where I read. What shall we read? I think I will read chapter 9. Chapter 9. All right. Success with accommodations. Being yourself in a way that is true and not forced, in a world not designed for you, that is a radical act and a highly supportive one. I'm talking about accommodations. Accommodations are not shortcuts. They are not special treatment. They're tools that make it possible for a person to show up for them as themselves and participate in the world without constantly fighting against the structure of that world. Disability advocates fought for inclusion and accommodations with good reason, and we are forever indebted to their sacrifices and efforts. When people hear the word accommodation, they often imagine a legal document at school, like, for example, the Individualized Education Program, the IEP, or a formal meeting with teachers and administrators. But accommodations are much broader than just paperwork. They happen in the classroom. They also happen at home, at the doctor's office, in restaurants, and family conversations, in the quiet choices that adults make every day about how to treat a young person. Sometimes accommodations can mean extra time, wiggle room built in, or sometimes it means crunch time, actually providing less time and a deadline on a vapchi-voop, let's go. Healthcare providers can include in their neuropsychological evaluations recommendations for specific accommodations, and this paperwork is then submitted as proof when requesting accommodations. I worked with a young person later diagnosed with ADHD who did some of their best work when they had a tiny deadline. They were interested in the goal, and the clock was ticking, so they were able to focus in a burst and then just exhale. On the other hand, sometimes providing copious time before a deadline and building in that wiggle room can work out exactly right. Recently, a learner of mine was submitting to a national competition. We spotted the deadline months in advance, which came in handy because they submitted the work before the deadline and even had time remaining to submit additional work. The choices we make as adults create the container for the choices of our teens. Let me tell you about Wilson. That's not his real name, but he is a preteen learner that I worked with who changed the way that I think about success. The way that I think about success with accommodations. Wilson is of Hispanic heritage, and I happen to be from Brazil. So we were discussing the overlap and the differences between Hispanic and Latin identities. One day during our meeting, we were talking about geography. He loves maps, flags, borders, and the long history of how countries have interacted with each other over time. Some kids love sports, some love statistics, some love sports statistics, some memorize song lyrics, but Wilson loves the shape of the world. His brain lights up when he looks at a map and begins connecting stories across time and place. So instead of redirecting him towards something that looked more putting it into a formal document, guiding him to some activity he didn't want to do, we followed his interest. We followed the conversation. My choice is always to follow his choice, thoughtfully and with learning opportunities in mind on how we can expand what he is interested in and who he is already. We pulled up maps and started exploring. If geography was what he loved, then geography would be our doorway. We looked at Spain and Portugal and began talking about the Iberian Peninsula. That led to questions about political history between the two countries. Wilson asked one question, which led to another, and before long we were deep in a conversation that connected history, language, and geography. Who was Philip II? Why did Spain and Portugal become connected under the same crown for a period of time? When exactly was Portugal governed by the Spanish monarchy? And why is Brazil a Portuguese-speaking country when most of South America speaks Spanish? Each question opened up another layer of the story. We were not working from a worksheet. There was no rigid lesson plan. There was no pressure to finish anything. What we were doing was exploring a curiosity that belonged and came from him. Wilson was completely immersed. His eyes were bright, his questions were rapid, and his mind was making connections faster than either of us could write down. We looked at the colonial routes across the Atlantic, talked about how empires expanded and collapsed, and connected those histories to language patterns that still shape the modern world. In that moment, it was clear that his brain was doing some serious work. The gears were turning and the learning was real. Then something beautiful happened, even more beautiful. After our session ended, he ran off to tell his older sister everything that we had discussed. He was animated, excited, and proud of what he had learned. He explained the connection between Spain and Portugal, the role of Philip II, and why Brazil ended up speaking Portuguese. He had not just absorbed information, he had made it his own. That is real learning. It was not the result of pressure or grading or compliance. It happened because we observed him carefully, noticed what he loved, and used that as the starting point. We followed his trail of consent, and before we knew it, we had climbed a mountain. This is true learning. Wilson has a PDA profile, which means that direct pressure can shut him down very quickly. I introduced PDA earlier in the book, but because I'm reading it, I'll introduce it now. PDA is pervasive demand for, it's got two names. One of them is pervasive drive for autonomy, and the other one I think is pervasive demand avoidance. Yeah, and it's a profile of autism. I would say that most people I know that either identify as they have PDA or they at least use it as like a point of inclusion, a way to communicate, a way to address their needs. Most people prefer the pervasive drive for autonomy language. That label is better. But anyway, I'm just going to continue reading. If I had demanded that he focus on a predetermined topic or forced him through a standard lesson structure, the likely outcome would have been frustration or disengagement. Instead, we followed his direction and worked within a flexible structure that respected his nervous system. The learning still happened. In fact, it happened more deeply. This is what letting them be themselves can look like in practice. Families sometimes worry that honoring autonomy means lowering expectations. In reality, the opposite is often true. When a young person feels seen and respected, their willingness to engage rises dramatically. When their interests are taken seriously, their brain opens up. Curiosity becomes fuel. The teen who feels trusted becomes capable of thinking harder, digging deeper, and sustaining attention longer than they might in a pressured environment. The lesson from Wilson's story is simple but powerful. If you push a neurodivergent teen into corners that are far away from their own heart and mind, you might achieve short-term compliance, but 5, 10, 15 years later, you may see the cost in the form of burnout, disengagement from learning, or a young adult who no longer trusts their own instincts. Listening to your teen is paying attention to what lights them up and what drains them. Notice the topics that they return to repeatedly, the environments when they are relaxed, the people that they feel safe around, and the ways they naturally communicate. All of this is valuable information. It tells you how their mind works. Once you begin to see those patterns clearly, you can build a flexible structure around that. Neurodivergent teens do not thrive in chaos, but they also do not thrive under rigid pressure. They need expectations that are clear, boundaries that make sense, and enough room inside those boundaries to move in ways that fit their nervous system. Okay. All right. I'm thinking of a question I could ask, like a common question. What is neurodivergence? Okay, that's a common question. Neurodivergence is a different way of learning, thinking, being in the world. Different than what? Different than what is expected, different than what the world has been mostly designed for, the mainstream, the status quo. So if a person thinks differently, moves differently, speaks differently, processes differently, etc., if their cognitive neurological way is significantly different from that mainstream way of doing things, then that person may be neurodivergent. And you don't need a diagnosis to be neurodivergent. It's not the same thing. A lot of people that are neurodivergent don't ascribe to their labels, to their diagnoses, to their disabilities, right? They don't even use that language. They're like, disorder is gross. What is disorder? Disorder is an insult, and I don't need it. Goodbye. And I talk about language in the book in part 1, and I talk about different neurodivergent perspectives. And I also name that the scope of neurodivergence is much wider than I think a lot of people give it credit for. So like complex trauma, which is something I talked about in Arlen Hamilton's podcast, that's a kind of neurodivergence. Complex trauma. Just having PTSD that is mixed up and layered and probably from childhood affects you and your how you show up in ways that are not normative, that are not whatever that means, right? And I speak about normal and how I don't love the word or the concept. I speak about that in the book too. I write about that in the book too. So I am neurodivergent, and I identify as such mostly because I also ascribe to the word disability, and some people do. For me personally, I think that when I say that I'm disabled or that I have disabilities, it feels to me validating of like just the existence that I'm in. And so it's a relief to hear that personally. It's like, oh, okay, right. Cool. Okay. So this is what we're dealing with. It feels honest. It feels honest to me personally, but not everybody who's neurodivergent is, like I said, diagnosed at all, has any kind of chronic anything, or ascribes to the words disability or to the words disorder. And we've moved away from even using terms like differently abled, apparently, which used to be more of an inclusive label. But I think I saw something recently from my head of learning and development, NK. She sent over something that said differently abled is no longer a term that we're using. I don't quite know why, but I'm interested in knowing the reason why. So for people watching this in the future, and for anybody who watched today, please do buy the book. You can go to offthebeatenpath.com. That's off the DA spelled wrong. D as in dog, A as in apple, beatenpath.com. You can order the book on the website, and here it is. Here it is. You can order this. It'll be shipped to your house very slowly, mind you. 3 weeks it'll take. Yep. But you can also come to the event if you happen to be in Brooklyn on August 13th, Thursday, August 13th, the reading and the signing at Bookmark Shop. Thank you so much to Bookmark Shop for hosting. And so, yeah, really, it continues, right? Because there will be a second edition, and there will be learning, reflecting, improving, acknowledging, a lot of aftermath. This isn't done. It's not done. I'm crossing it off my list, but it's not done. Okay? It's both. All right? How about that? How about that for a contradiction? Walt Whitman? All right. Bye. Your stream will stop immediately and you will no longer be live. Yes, thank you. That's the point. End.